With open arms, we embraced those who looked nothing like us, assuming that all life honors life. But we were wrong. In the end, we fed and strengthened our own captors. We cannot claim naivete. We cannot say we were people undeveloped. We cannot say there were no signs. We can say only that we did not heed them. Sound wisdom was as common to us as the evening breeze. We scoffed and shrugged at elders' forewarning of a time of great tragedy and chaos. We did not believe them. We had learned to ignore our own gods, to take their goodness for granted, to believe that because of them, we were immune to external attack. So we did not hear them. We heard only what we sought to hear. But now we hear it all, echoing in our regretful memories. If only we could have seen into the future, we might have avoided the onslaught. Most of us had no such powers. The few who did, the seers and sages, we dismissed. They were always speaking of things to come, warning of impending disasters that rarely came to pass, at least in our lifetime. Now we know that prophecies come to one generation and materialize in another. If only we had listened. If only we had had more disciplined ears. But we did not. So we blamed ourselves. We blamed our gods. We blamed each other. But there was no one to blame. Only shame to bear. And pity, great pity, that a people so strong missed so many clues. The forest whispered it, the birds chirped it, the trees waved it, the antelope danced it, the tall grass swayed it, the lions roared it, the elders said it over and over. Beware! Seek not the thing you do not need. Greed destroys wisdom. Let just enough be enough. But we were too blessed. Our abundance suggested immortality, so we stopped searching for invisible things. Our mothers had worked so hard that we didn't have to. Our fathers had killed enough game that their sons hardly knew the hunt. We didn't know then what we know now. A life of leisure destroys a child. When there's nothing to work for, there's nothing to gain, nothing to die for. So we had to die that we might live again. And that's what we did. We died. By the thousands and hundreds of thousands, we died. We'd never seen such unjustifiable violence. Bloody bodies laying prostrate across the earth as if pleading for forgiveness. Those who survived did not mourn. There was no time. The loss was too great. We still have not mourned. We still have no time. We remember, but we have not mourned. And so death came quickly. It came unannounced. It came cloaked in our own multicolored garb. It came white as clouds, smiling as if it loved us. Death came in the darkness of night while we were laughing and talking with ancestors. It came in legions with guns and ammunition too powerful for us to battle. It came like the monsoon winds. It came like a flood. It came with earth-shaking force we could not control. It came under the authority of nations we did not know. It came with men whose absent wives benefited from their husbands' despicable behavior. It came with men whose children would one day inherit their father's legacy of violence and wealth ill-gained. Death came to strip the land of its glory. It came to thousands and hundreds of thousands without sympathy for our loss. It came with impaled violence. It came with impaled brutality. It came to scatter children's blood-soaked bodies across the earth, thus fertilizing dry, yearning soil. But mostly, death came to teach us we were brothers. This was the coming. Some were taken by surprise. Some were killed on the spot. Some were taken in their sleep. Some were ambushed in the forest. Some were tricked into believing they were going for a walk. Some were consumed with drink. Some were too lazy to fight. Some were busy settling communal affairs. Some were nursing wounds inflicted by spouses. Some were telling children bedtime stories of talking spiders. Some were beating drums to warn others, but most were not listening. When the drums fell silent, it was too late. Our destruction was complete. An entire village raised in one solitary cycle of the sun and moon. They destroyed our homes and forced our leaving. They bound us with chains of heavy iron. Elders were rendered mute and lifeless. Babies deprived of life's knowing. All we could do was wonder. We could not speak. There was nothing to say. In those moments, we heard our elders' warnings and we understood. We knew they loved us now far more than we understood before, but they could not hear our cries, our pleas of lament, not with the ears of the living. So one by one, they took us away. They seized the farmers first. Those who knew the land, the earth, the ingredients of the soil, they took them first. Those who heard its rumble, felt its movement, understood its seasons. Those who knew seeds and germination, plant spacing and harvest. Those who walked barefoot upon the soil in homage to its life-sustaining power. They took them first. It was no accident. They would farm again in a new world, feeding a nation committed to their degradation. And after the farmers, they took the healers. They were not hard to find. Most days they lingered about the village, repairing bodies and minds too troubled to heal alone. They had learned from us the value of our healers. They knew that without them, we were weak, vulnerable people. If they took our healers, they must have assumed, they also took our ability to mend ourselves. They were right. So they captured our healers that we might not rebound. Villages of frightened, wounded people without medicine men and women would take centuries to restore. They knew this. Their strategy was as calculated as the hyena's attack. Without shaman, who would usher life back into our suffering souls? Who would reassure us that death had not come to stay? Who would cleanse the forest and the land of poisonous energy brought by evildoers? We did not know. What we knew was that our wounds would fester a lifetime without someone to cure them. And so in one day, panic and uncertainty became our way. Our pride deteriorated into fractured, deep-seated insecurities. And after the healers, they took the Jali, that our stories might not be told. And after them, the warriors, that our collective strength might be diminished. And after them, the artists, who told us we were beautiful. They chained and muted orators and teachers to stop the flow of inspiration and to abort the belief that we were gods. They murdered gatekeepers on the spot, since at their word, multitudes of angels would have come. They would have come, but they were never summoned. And finally, they slaughtered those whose gifts were less visible, although to us no less valuable. Keepers of knowledge, masters of the spirit, gurus of assistance, guardians of order and balance. In the end, pale people stole away everyone and everything that made us strong. This was the coming. We marched quickly. We marched through forests. We marched over hills and valleys. We marched through hot desert land. We marched alongside waterfalls. We marched through high grass. We marched on barren earth. We marched past monkeys dashing in the distance. We marched past giraffes whose frantically swiveling heads told us never to give up the fight. We marched past lions roaring anxiously in the distance. We marched past anthills wherein frightened ants scrambled hysterically, then vanished out of sight. We marched past gardens sprouted but not tilled. We marched past neighboring villages we thought we despised. We marched past sites of rituals where we'd known spirit possession and healing. We marched past communal huts where government officials once met to solve collective dilemmas. We marched past people we did not know. We marched through regions we had never seen. We marched until some of us died. They were unchained and tossed aside. There are no markers to commemorate them. Of this we are sure. We marched and we marched and we marched and we marched and we marched some more. From the rising to the setting of the sun, we marched. Then we collapsed and the moon gave us ease. But at the sun's rising, we marched some more. Our ancestors came along with us, but they would not save us. This was our lesson, and this was the coming. They picked through us like an assortment of fruit, choosing whom they preferred. They scattered and melded tribes. One of our own, a man called Frank, made this possible. He knew us. He knew our marks. We knew his. He knew what would break our spirits, and he enjoyed doing so. With his help, they shuffled us below decks into the big bellies of the boats. They packed us on our sides in rows and lines, arching our bodies to fit into narrow chambers. Sometimes they took us all with no regard for human comfort. Some, chained with the willing and unwilling, jumped into the water, trying once again to swim away, but they were either died or were captured or killed. We knew not where we were going, but we knew for sure that we were never going home. On the 61st day, immediately after dancing, we were instructed to remain on deck. Crewmen had their guns drawn and pointed at us from every direction. Unable to understand their tongue, we studied their gestures and discerned that our suspicions had been right. They suspected us of planning a mutiny. They grabbed one of our sisters, no one knew her name, and bound her with thick ropes. They lifted her, screaming the while, with the mast of the sail, and slowly lowered her body into the water. When they lifted her again, her lower half was gone. Some monster of the sea had taken it. Shreds of ragged flesh dangled from her bloody midsection. Within seconds, she was dead. Most of us turned away. It was a sight unfit for human eyes. A few tried to comprehend what kind of people these people were. But there was no need answering that question now. This was our lesson, and this was the coming.